Alright, we're looking at Raito's theory on the crying driver solved. I mean, I know nothing about. I mean, FNAF lore. The FNAF lore literally is so convoluted that made Matt Pet retire. So let's just check this out.
The Crying Child is a character that's in central focus of Five Nights at Freddy's. But that being said, how much do we actually know about this kid? I mean, for Christ's sake, he's a main character of the franchise, and most people still call him the Crying Child. We don't even have close to a confirmed name for him. He's Afton's youngest son. I thought it would be helpful to go over all of the confirmed information
we actually don't have a name for him.
Speculation and my personal thoughts
Well, his name is Dave.
where he fits in the timeline, like we did for Casty a couple weeks ago. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. The first real mentions of the Crying Child start in FNAF 4. After all, that game is basically about him. The game presents itself as the nightmares of the Crying Child, this kid. He remains nameless through the entire game, seems terrified of the animatronics, is relentlessly bullied by his older brother, and takes solace in this Fredbear plushie that is seen everywhere throughout the daytime minigame. But this bullying comes to a head, where on his birthday, the older brother in the Foxy mask and his friends pick up the Crying Child and place his head inside of the jaw of the Fredbear Springlock animatronic, which then shuts and doesn't necessarily kill him. There's dialogue immediately after of people seemingly talking to him in some sort of...
I don't know how that seemingly not kill him. His head got crushed into like freaking spaghetti. I mean, I don't know how you think that did not kill him, instantly kill him. But I mean, the FNAF lore, am I right?
Of unconscious state, but at the end of that cutscene there is a flatline like sound effect. So the thinking is that it sent him into some kind of coma or something, and then he eventually died. Not before hearing the voice that he thought was coming from Fredbear say, "I will put you back together." Now, when this game came out, we didn't have much context for who these kids were. Many people did assume that they were William Afton's children, but to be fair, by the time of FNAF 4, we didn't even have the name William Afton. The Silver Ice didn't come out until after this game. In the very next game, Sister Location, we got a lot more context to better color FNAF 4. At first, Sister Location does seem like a completely self-contained game, but by the end of it, we start learning more and more about the grander franchise, especially in the private office. Inside of there's monitors and a keypad, and if you punch in
I forget there was a...
the same year
I forget about... See, I totally forget about Sister Location. I completely forget about Sister Location as a thing.
With shots
I gotta be honest.
We see in the FNAF 4 nightmares. Pair that with the identical Fredbear plushie and walkie-talkie next to them.
Oh yeah, I totally forget about that.
William Afton's laboratory, and pieces start to fall together. The community began to settle on the Crying Child, and by extension his Foxy mask-wearing brother, being children of William Afton, who was keeping an eye on them through this walkie-talkie plush and the cameras while doing whatever experiments he did down in these bunkers. William Afton being the same man who did the missing child incident and owned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But interestingly enough, even though this game gave us the names of the other two children, that being Michael, the older brother who survives, and Elizabeth, their sister who likely slept in this room, this game doesn't give us the name of the Crying Child. And that's a trend that's continued for the rest of the series, because anytime the Crying Child is even remotely mentioned, he's still not named.
No, he's not.
Well, maybe except for one possibility, but we'll get there in due time. And that's all the confirmed information about the Crying Child, which is admittedly incredibly sparse. So let's talk about possible references to the Crying Child. Now that we know the general aesthetic of the Crying Child and that he's very closely related to Fredbear, many people believe that the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame is all about attempting to help the Crying Child move on. And I think that's a really solid theory. After all, FNAF 4 came out
that would be a valid theory. I think that would be a valid theory. But I feel like the movie sort of debunks that a little bit. Because I don't know if they're following movie law and game law. I don't know.
After FNAF 3, which
FNAF
was
is
basically
very convoluted.
about the Happiest Day. The Crying Child's last conscious thought is his Fredbear plushie and all of his animatronic friends saying, "We'll put you back together," and in Happiest Day, a bunch of kids wearing the masks of those animatronics put pieces together to help this Crying Child move on.
That's true.
Not to mention how
Cat Girl Anime Boy. Okay, this is a Fugi. freaking weird. I'm not a cat girl anime boy. I am a bear. I'm a bear demon boy. But if you're gonna call me names, at least get it correct.
This scene perfectly mirrors the scene of the crying child's
All right.
bite. After all, we have these tables that line up really, really well, and a final room.
That actually is kind of almost super accurate. You go by comparison. That's actually super accurate. Like, wow, that's actually really super accurate in a way. I didn't actually make that reference before, but goddamn. And if we go by this one as well too, you know, with the green mask, the pig mask thing, this is definitely because especially now with Secret of the Mimic, all this is definitely Monty, Pigpatch, and Mr. Hippo mask for sure.
Affecting the crying child's life. Like, it is incredibly likely, if not near confirmed, that Happiest Day is laying the crying child to rest. But the question about this theory becomes when. Because theoretically, the crying child could move on pretty much at any point in the timeline. As far as we're aware...
Well, what about this theory? One of these two scenes are happening at the same time, but in different perspectives. You know, maybe these two scenes are exactly one and the same, but two completely different things. Just saying.
He doesn't necessarily affect the timeline in any way after he's died. But looking at this minigame, it seems very likely that the other children in the minigame move on as well once the crying child moves on himself. And we know that can't happen until FNAF 6, so we'll put a pin in the timeline of that for now. Another possible reference to the crying child are the Bear of Vengeance cutscenes that you can unlock in Ultimate Custom Night. They feature an...
I'm gonna be honest, I also completely forget about Ultimate Custom Night, because I played that game way before I was a VTuber. Way before I was a VTuber. Way before I was a VTuber.
Dialogue between Freddy and Foxy and Mangle. Freddy trying but failing to conquer Foxy, and Foxy laughing about how easy it is to beat Freddy. Interpretations for these cutscenes go all over the place. Sometimes it's William and Henry, sometimes it's Elizabeth and Michael. But a fairly common interpretation I think is useful to bring up is that Freddy represents the crying child, Foxy represents Michael, and Mangle represents Elizabeth. After all, Michael did wear a Foxy mask and was constantly bullying his younger brother, who probably never got a leg up on him. And then Mangle would be Elizabeth, because if this is Elizabeth's room, clearly she liked Mangle. Again, this is just speculation, but if this connection is true, really the only purpose...
Oh, that actually makes perfect sense too. Hello, friendo. Oh, that actually makes perfect sense. That actually makes perfect sense. Yeah, I never thought about that cutscene, but this cutscene for such a long time. But yeah, this is obviously Michael and Elizabeth, because we confirm that Michael from the movies is a complete has no redemption arc. It's literally just a completely different Michael. Like, yeah, this makes total sense.
Plus, that seemingly Elizabeth helped Michael bully the crying child, but not much else is gleaned from that. And speaking of weird side games, we do need to talk about FNAF World, because while FNAF World never really directly addresses the crying child, it does talk about FNAF 3 Happiest Day. After all, many people, and myself included, see FNAF World as sort of a retelling of the Happiest Day in general. When you're doing the clock ending, you basically recreate all the steps to access the Happiest Day in FNAF 3. And finally, once you do all of that, you're told that the whole...
It's such a shame that the FNAF World sort of bombed, because I feel like FNAF World wasn't a terrible game, just that it was just not a game that people really liked. I liked it because I like RPGs, but I know a lot of people did not like FNAF World. Because we never got the third update. We never got the third update for it. It's a bit of a shame, because I was actually really looking forward to it. It wasn't a terrible game, but I wouldn't say it was the best FNAF game in the world.
Help somebody find their way, to leave breadcrumbs for them, aka helping somebody to move on. If that interpretation is true, then FNAF World is similarly completely built around the idea of helping the crying child move on. And it's for those reasons, plus all of the connections of Ultimate Custom Night and FNAF World, that I believe Happiest Day takes place after FNAF 6, likely during the fire of it. After all, everyone would be gathered in the same place, and their connection to this realm would be weakened by the incineration. Seems like the perfect time to try to reach out and help the crying child finally find peace. And there's one other source of information about the crying child. We need to bring it up because it's one of the most heavily debated sources of information about the character, but it's not actually a book. Once again, we're going to be talking about the good old security logbook. And if y'all thought the Cassidy puzzle was arbitrary, you're not ready for this one, which
goddamn security logbook.
We discussed a couple videos ago that this book was not only used to learn more about Michael Afton and discover the name Cassidy for the vengeful spirit, but it seems clear that the crying child is also involved in this book. He is the one that's changing the text on the page in order to...
But again, is this Michael Afton though? Because we now know from the movie, Michael Afton and Michael Schmidt are two completely different people. So,
communicate. After all, it fits in logically with what his general character is, and the things he says are very wimpy, which fits in, like I can't see, I don't know, and things like that. So naturally, people were using this book endlessly to see if we could solve what the crying child's name was using it. That way we would finally have all of the names of the Afton family. Well, except for Mrs. Afton, but she never really comes up and Scott doesn't like naming women, so. For a long time, nobody could agree on a methodology on finding the name of the crying child. Someone at one point found the name Evan, but while the evidence for E, V, and A
that's right. Wasn't Evan the brother of Michael Schmidt's brother? Isn't that Michael Schmidt's brother in the movie?
Was pretty good. The evidence for the N was lacking, and it was sort of just a, well, this is kind of a name. But recently, Hyperdroid made an incredibly compelling video solving the name of the crying child using this book. And with his methodology built off of what we knew from the EVA, he settled on the name Dave. And frankly, it's a theory I believe in. I like to believe the crying child's name.
Yeah, but isn't also isn't also confirmed in the, I'm not sure, well, in theorized that the Golden Freddy has two entities in the suit, so like Dave and Evan. Like then that wasn't that saying that there's two. I think it was one of the books. It's one of the recent FNAF books that Golden Freddy has two entities in it, or aka Stitch Wraith has two entities in it, and I think they was trying doing like a sort of parallel.
Dave, and it's also a harmless theory, right? Like if we're wrong about the crying child's name, that doesn't really change anything about the timelines we create. It just makes it easier to say Dave than the crying child. And there are some really cool connections you can make if it's true, like the fact that in the Silver Eyes, William Afton uses the fake name Dave Miller, and this franchise has a history of characters using the fake names of dead characters, so this lines up very well. But to be very clear, this is incredibly heavy speculation. As confident as I am in the theory that the crying child's name is Dave, it is just that, a theory. It's also relatively newer, so most people still use the term the crying child when talking about the character. Now,
makes sense.
Not confirmed, but the theory is only like a year or so old, so it hasn't really caught on yet either. And that's everything we know about the crying child, which again, frankly, is not a lot. But the overarching question always comes back to, why does any of this matter? Why should we know things about the crying child? After all, like I've mentioned, he doesn't really affect the timeline in any way directly. But that's the thing. The crying child isn't important for what he does. The crying child is important for what he inspires in other characters. Not only are seemingly two different games completely focused around helping the crying child to move on, but there are many arguments to be made that William Afton's motivation to begin killing in the first place was to save the crying child's life. After all, once the crying child is bitten, one of the things we hear is a voice saying, "I will put you back together." Since it seems likely that William Afton was talking through the Fredbear plushie from what we see in Sister Location, we can assume that
to be honest, that makes
I feel
it makes sense being
promising
William
his
Afton.
dying son that he will find some way to bring him back, to fix what has happened to him, which would essentially be trying to find immortality. In this interpretation, you could contextualize everything William does as stemming from this core purpose, to find immortality to save his dying son, and then eventually getting mad with power and trying to manipulate life itself. Which does line up with what we know about William Afton from the Silver Eyes, who does have a goal of trying to become immortal, whether that be because of a fear of the afterlife because he's sure he's going to hell, or just a manic obsession with power. Annual disclaimer, this is not me saying that I believe in will care, the theory that William Afton actually really cares about his children. Very clear he doesn't. He sees them as tools to use at best. Now, I didn't say that I believe in will care in this video, I didn't even imply it. But people are so weirdly angry about that theory that if I don't make this disclaimer, I'm gonna get like 50 angry DMs and I just don't want to deal with it. Anyway, with all of this evidence and speculation in mind, I think we can craft a pretty good timeline around the crying child and what his role in the story is. So let's do just that. William Afton was very busy doing whatever it was that he thought was more important than actually taking care of his children. So he came up with a solution. Not only would he watch them through cameras he placed throughout his home, but he would keep track of one of them, the youngest, with a Fredbear plushie he could talk through. And of course have Michael Afton watch over the kid. Sure, Michael picked on his younger brother out of resentment for having to watch him, but that wasn't William's problem. Until it was, when one day the bullying went so far as it led to the accidental death of that very same
Mike's kind of a
son.
dick.
And although William Afton promises to fix him,
Michael's kind
he
of a
eventually
dick.
dies. But his life was so messy and tragic, with memories left all over the place, that his mind is too broken to move on. He's unable to possess anything, unable to interact or remember what his life even was. All he can do is suffer in silence, alone. And this is how it goes for quite some time, until eventually a spirit does notice him, trying to reach out, asking about his memories, trying to figure out who this child is. And from his own responses, he doesn't even know much. It isn't until someone exceptionally
it makes sense, because literally his brains were pretty much scrambled into his brains were pretty much scrambled, so I'll say he don't know who the fuck he is.
In a moment where everyone is loosely connected to the world.
What is this? This
very
is
same someone
FNAF theories.
Is able to contact him, attempting to give any sort of peace to the child. At the FNAF 6 fire, everyone had been gathered and incinerated together, and Charlotte Emily, someone well-versed in helping spirits move on or possess things, is able to see the memories of all the victims in that fire, and in it find the crying child, and using whatever she can and whatever help she can gather to put his mind back together, finally allowing the crying child to find peace and rest. It would ultimately be up to him to follow the breadcrumb trail they'd made for him, but the happiest day was formed for him to follow. His birthday was fixed, all in the hopes that the crying child
you play FNAF?
Finally have his day.
Because I'm reacting to videos today, friendo.
Why do people think that Gregory is the crying child? And why does the crying child have the same bedroom as the mimic? And why does Dave sound an awful lot like David Murray? Honestly, we don't have time for all that. Look at how long this video took just to talk about what the crying child is in the story. We don't have time to talk about what it is or what it inspired.
Gregory being the crying child has been a theory for so long.
This is pretty much it. Unless I'm forgetting
something
that doesn't
make sense.
You can let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, if you're all FNAF'd out from all this deep diving, last week I talked about everything we know about the upcoming Poppy Playtime chapter, which is in like 3 weeks. I'm so...
Alright. Good video, good video.